Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good life. I'm Chelsea Rita, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual Sangha service for Sunday, December 20th, 2020 at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. Today's service will feature the Sutra chanting of the Juseige with Minister's Assistants Reverend Dr. David Painting and Camille Painting, followed by the Dharma talk by Minister's Assistant Reverend Elaine Donlin, a Gatha titled Farewell, and closing remarks by Taiyo, Scallion, Kimura. But first, let us begin with a group reading. Please join me in reciting the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One, now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth of this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken ourselves to the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we submerge the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be free from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in spirit of universal oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
Namandavats, 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 namandav, 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 namandav. Juseige from the larger sutra of Amida Buddha. Gagon Chosegan Ishimujono Shigantumanzo Sebujo Shoga Gaomuyoko Buidai Seishu Busai Shobingu Sebujo Shoga Gashijo Bundo Myoshojo Jipo Gukyomi Shomon Sebujo Shoga Rijokujin Shonen Joe Shubonyo Shigumu Jodo Isho Teninshi Jinriki Endaigo Usho Musaido Shoujo Sankuyo Kosai Shuyakunan Kai Shiegen Meshi Konmon Soku Shokudo Sudan Zen Shumon Kosojo Manzo Iyoro Jipo Nichigan Shujuki Dengo Ontugen Ishukai Ozo Kose Kudoku Jodai Shuju Seppo Shishiku Muyo Isai Mu Musoku Shudoku Gane Shinjoman Dokui Sangayo Yoson Gokechi Sudan Mifusho Ganga Kueri Yoshi Sai Shoson 自我逆行か大戦の感動極小天民おうち妙慶ナマナムナマナムナマナムナマナムナマナムがにしくどくよんどせいさいどんもないちんおじょあんわと Namandavits, 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 Namandavits.
Please join me in Kansho. Those who feel uncertain of birth should say the Nembutsu, aspiring first for their own birth. Those who feel that their own birth is completely settled should, mindful of the Buddha's benevolence, hold the Nembutsu in their hearts and say it to respond in gratitude to that benevolence with the wish, may there be peace in the world and may the Buddha's teachings spread. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Greetings. I cannot believe it's mid-December already, with 2021 just around the corner, a couple of weeks away. This past year, we have seen devastating fires up in NorCal and in Australia. We're continuing to experience a deadly pandemic that to date has taken the lives of over 1.6 million people worldwide. Over 300,000 of those deaths occurred here in the US alone. And of course, we've also seen a major social justice movement grow as it opposes systemic racism. And at the same time, we've endured distressing political fractures, leading to threats of and actual violence occurring. Someone recently very wisely said that this year, our baseline is trauma. And given that observation, I find myself even more grateful for those who are stepping up to meet the moment, like our BCSF board, who continues to meet virtually, moving the temple forward with responsible stewardship. Our ministers' assistants, who are ensuring the continuity of our ongoing religious services. Our supervising minister, Reverend Henry Adams, who continues to provide wise counsel to the board and to our MAP team, while offering invaluable support by way of memorials for those whose loved ones have passed. I'm also deeply grateful for the BCSF members and friends who are volunteering in a variety of ways that foster care and connection with our Sangha. And if I allow my perspective to widen, I see within our larger community a remarkable flow of compassion, often expressed in selfless action. I am being supported and sustained by unseen and seen compassionate activity. A Shin friend and priest recently described Amida as the activity of the Dharma. And a professor priest working at the Honganji said during a lecture a couple years ago that Amida is the Buddha's wish for all beings to attain liberation. So Shinran, with his keen awareness of his human limitations, was an advocate for reliance on other power, the power of Amida made manifest in the primal vow in order to attain liberation. But what does that look like? And how do I entrust myself to that? Reverend Tai Tietso Uno once described it as floating in the ocean. It's not my own power that I float. In fact, when I exert my own power and struggle to stay above water, I inevitably sink. It is only when I let go of my own power, my own self-calculation, that I am able to float. And it is by virtue of the ocean itself that my floating is even possible. In the same way, I live my life by virtue of that ocean of great compassion, the ocean of Amida's vow, that expansive and limitless ocean. Shinran used the ocean metaphor many times, many times in his writings, describing the Nembutsu as the treasure ocean of virtues that is true reality, and the ocean of the wisdom vow, the Buddha of unhindered light. And this suchness, this oneness pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the ocean of all beings. So just as the various waters enter the ocean and immediately become seawater, so too the waters of the mind, both the virtuous and the foolish, all become the mind of great compassion. Last night, I was humbled to participate in a vigil called the Annual Homeless Persons Memorial 2020. It's billed as an interfaith or no faith memorial hosted by the San Francisco Night Ministry and Skywatchers and the San Francisco Interfaith Council to remember those who have died this year while living on our San Francisco streets. And due to the COVID-19 restrictions, the evening's vigil, which was held outside of City Hall in the plaza, was attended only by the participants following strict safety protocols. But it was live streamed via Facebook so that people who would have usually attended could watch and safely remember and mourn their friends via their phones, wherever they might be. Skywatcher is a wonderful organization that brings residents of the San Francisco Tenderloin District into partnership with professional artists, created these beautiful individual white banners with the names of every person being honored, painted on each one. During the vigil, I had the privilege of striking a large bell after each name was read. I struck the bell 342 times. The reading of the names were interspersed with prayers offered from different spiritual traditions: Native American, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and Buddhist. Mira, the person who offered the Buddhist prayer, chose to share the beautiful metta, loving kindness prayer. So in silence, in prayer, and in song, 342 individuals were remembered, were honored, and were mourned. All 342 unhoused people had names, had faces, had hopes and desires, had dreams and stories. The reading of the names initially, they reminded me of our Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorials. Except this annual memorial is not normal, nor should it be normalized. This memorial is a sad but necessary tradition that I hope will end one day when people are no longer dying on our cold city streets. So many deaths could have been prevented. On my drive home, I wondered, how can we as a nation, as a city, let this unnecessary suffering continue? How many more must die unsheltered on the cold, harsh streets of this very rich city? And each year, the number has risen. We read over 100 more names this year than last year. And yes, our baseline is trauma, but only when we're aware of the suffering. When I came home, I went right to my altar, my heart full with gratitude for the opportunity to have participated in this very moving vigil. But mostly my heart was heavy with the weight of all those who suffered during their life on the street. I sat quietly, and out came the Nembutsu. It wasn't forced, and it wasn't suppressed. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo, I surrender to, I entrust in Amida Butsu, the true reality of the precious impermanence and profound interdependence. As Reverend David Matsumoto has written, when we entrust in that vow, when we awaken to the boundless wisdom and compassion of life, then we will see no difference between ourselves and others. We will realize the interconnectedness of all beings. When others suffer, we will suffer. Our happiness can only exist in the happiness of all. This is what the Buddha teaches. So when we entrust in something other than our own self-concern, a readjustment occurs, a radical shift in perspective of how we view ourselves and the world in which we live. And it is out of this perspective that gratitude and compassion arise. Please join me in Gassho to hear the words of Shinran once again from letter number 2 as found in the collected works of Shinran. Those who feel uncertain of birth should say the Nembutsu, aspiring first for their own birth. Those who feel that their own birth is completely settled should, mindful of the Buddha's benevolence, hold the Nembutsu in their hearts and say it to respond in gratitude to that benevolence with the wish, may there be peace in the world and may the Buddha's teaching spread. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandos, Namandos, Namandos. Please stay safe and stay healthy and stay connected.
Until Hi there, I'm Taiyo. For today's meditative reading, I would like to share a passage from The Tao of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff. The book uses characters from the classic Winnie the Pooh tales, which was one of my all-time favorites as a kid, to illustrate Taoist teachings. Christopher Robin has just asked Pooh a question. What do you like doing best in the world, Pooh? Well, said Pooh, what I like best. And then he had to stop and think. Because although eating honey was a very good thing to do, there was a moment just before you began to eat it, which was better than when you were, but he didn't know what it was called. The honey doesn't taste so good once it is being eaten. The reward is not so rewarding once it has been given. If we add up all the rewards in our lives, we won't have very much. But if we add up the spaces between the rewards, we'll come up with quite a bit. And if we add up the rewards and the spaces, then we'll have everything, every minute of the time that we spent. What could we call that moment before we begin to eat the honey? Some would call it anticipation, but we think it's more than that. We would call it awareness. It's when we become happy and realize it, if only for an instant. By enjoying the process, we can stretch that awareness out so that it's no longer only a moment, but covers the whole thing. Then we can have a lot of fun, just like Pooh. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. For today's announcements, the BCSF Book Club meets every other Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. via Zoom. The next meeting is this Tuesday, December 22nd. The book they are currently reading is The Awareness of Self, A Guide to the Understanding of Shin Buddhism by Reverend Gyodo Haguri. Mindful Meditation with Leo Jocelyn meets on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 p.m., also via Zoom. There will be no service next Sunday. Luckily, our YouTube channel is brimming with great services from the past to tide you over until the next services, which will be on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. If you have any questions about these announcements, please feel free to call or email the BCSF office for more information. For today's appreciations, thank you to Chelsea Arita for her opening remarks. Thank you to Minister's Assistants, Reverend Dr. David Padding and Camille Padding, for leading the Sutra chanting. Thank you to Minister's Assistant, Reverend Elaine Donlin, for her Dharma talk. Thank you to Kevin Yoza for helping to produce these online services. Thank you for joining us for today's virtual Sangha service. It brings me a lot of joy to be able to participate in BCSF in December of 2020, a full year and a half since I left San Francisco. It might be hard to believe, but I visited the Buddhist Church of San Francisco for the very first time in June of 2018. I attended a workshop led by PJ Hirabayashi, who was teaching her Obon dance, Age and Aika, so the temple community could include it in that summer's Obon. Just last week, I attended an online workshop with PJ. And once again, I'm just being myself and present and dancing with strangers, even over Zoom, I was reminded that our connections in both our Sangha and the great assembly of which we are all a part are timeless. And for that, I say thank you for staying connected with one another. Please take care, stay safe, and we wish you a happy holiday season and a prosperous new year. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda.